that guy Mahmoud Khalil. So they picked him up. He's not charged with a crime, and they sent him to Louisiana, away from his 8-month pregnant wife. So he's asked. So now Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, he's asked: is there any evidence of a link to terrorism, or is it just Mahmoud Khalil's point of view? So, by the way, as a guest of the United States, you cannot speak out against Israel because America first. Just so you know.
First to speak up and say, hey, stop criticizing Israel.
So here we are.
Ask you about a decision you made to revoke a student visa for someone at Columbia University this past week. The Wall Street Journal editorial board writes, the administration needs to be careful. It's targeting real promoters of terrorism, not breaking the great promise of a green card by deporting anyone with controversial political views. Can you substantiate any form of material support for terrorism, specifically to Hamas, from this Columbia student? Or was it simply that he was espousing a controversial political point of view?
So, spoiler alert, no, he can't. Because if he did, they would charge him with a crime.
Wow, remember last time Rubio made her look stupid?
Yeah, remember that?
Quite a reversal, isn't it?
Yes. Well, when you're on the wrong side of an issue, it's easy to make you look bad. So here's his response. Hey, you got any evidence that he's supporting terrorists? You got any evidence?
Well, not just the student. We're going to do more. In fact, we every day now we're approving visa revocations. And if that visa led to a green card, the green card process as well. And here's why. It's very simple. When you apply to enter the United States and you get a visa, you are a guest. And you're coming as a student, you're coming as a tourist or what have you. And in it, you have to make certain assertions. And if you tell us when you apply for a visa, I'm coming to the...
So he didn't have a visa. He's a legal resident. He had a green card. And so he's saying that first of all...
So our guests don't have all the rights that you would have.
So you're saying that if you're our guest and you're not a citizen yet, that you don't... So here's what people miss. Freedom of speech is not a treat that we hand out to people we like.
No, I just get it.
Freedom of speech is a value that we protect, we cherish, and we try to spread to everyone everywhere.
It's called a right because it don't come from the government. That's why they put that God crap in there.
That's why. That's
to
right.
let you know, the government acknowledge it. Well, it's the bill. It's the amendments. It's the afterthoughts to the Constitution, but it's there.
It's the Bill of Rights.
Now, too late, assholes.
Yeah, it's so again, this whole thing of that freedom of speech isn't just something that we give as a treat to ourselves or to a treat we give to people we like. Freedom of speech is a value that we cherish, protect, and try to spread to everyone everywhere. Why? Because that's who we are. That's our values.
Well, you thought that, but I mean, you think like a poor person.
Okay, so here's
shameful.
So here's what he's got more to say.
U.S. to participate in pro-Hamas events. That runs counter to the foreign policy interest of the United States of America.
You know who participated in pro-Hamas events? Benjamin Netanyahu funded them.
Did the guy do that?
Did he do that?
Did he help make a sign that someone held up and someone didn't feel comfortable? Because I bet it's that one.
And by the way, opposing the Israel bombing of Gaza is not inherently pro-Hamas. I'm not pro-Hamas.
I gave up on Hamas in 2006.
Yes, I'm not pro-Hamas. But
I said, hey, these guys are no good. But Bibi said, we got to fund them for 20 years.
That's right.
Until they do a 9/11 on us that I can exploit because I'm about to be kicked out of office.
That's exactly right.
And we're all going to pretend it's not my fault and really all of our fault for running a goddamn concentration camp.
America. It's that simple. So you lied. You came. If you had told us that you were going to do that, we never would have given you the visa. Now you're here. Now you do it. So you lied to us. You're out. It's that simple.
But
is
there any evidence of a link to terrorism, or is it just his point of view?
Yeah, they take over.
It's just his point of view.
Yeah.
So there's points of view you're allowed to have, and there's points of view you're not. People say, well, he was organizing violent protests. Well, if they didn't charge him with that.
Yeah,
Because
let's see the evidence. Don't tell me I should watch the clip that some Hasbro put up. I want to hear the legal charges because it's not like a bullshit Me Too, right? This is a real legal problem against terror. Oh, he spoke bad about Israel and he's a guest. Well, I thought our guests have rights that we have here.
Yeah.
Especially a guest that has a green card.
And you should watch the news. These guys take over entire buildings. They vandalize cars.
Yeah, if he took over an entire building, you would charge him with that. You would charge him with vandalism. You'd charge him with terrorism. You'd charge him with kidnapping.
This reminds me of January 6th bullshit.
That's exactly what this is.
Yeah. Wow. Everybody just went through that. I hope you're noticing the same thing they're doing to somebody else. This is the most disappointing part of conservatives.
But they're doing it at the behest of a foreign country.
No, our best friend and also, Jimmy, an aircraft carrier.
Intensely.
They shut down
I'm
colleges.
asking about the specific justification for the revocation of his visa. Was there any evidence of material support for terrorism?
Was the negotiator negotiating on behalf of people that took over a campus, that vandalized buildings? Negotiating over what? That's a crime in and of itself, that they're involved in being the negotiator, the spokesperson, this, that, the other.
Then why wouldn't you charge him with a crime?
Right.
Because it's not.
Oh, he's being a bad guest, Jimmy.
Because he didn't commit a crime.
By the way, he didn't do any of that stuff. You're just saying that, and I don't believe you. This is the same vehemence that Marco Rubio tells his wife he's not gay with.
We don't want it. We don't need these people in our country. We never should have allowed them in the first place.
We don't need APAC,
if he had told
asshole.
us, I'm going over there, and I'm going over there to become the spokesperson and one of the leaders of a movement that's going to turn one of your allegedly elite colleges upside down. People can't even go to school. Library buildings being vandalized. We never would have let him in. We never would have let him in to begin with. And now that he's doing it and he's here, he's going to leave, and so are others, and we're going to keep doing it. And by the way, I find it ironic that a lot of these people out there defending the First Amendment speech, alleged free speech rights of these Hamas sympathizers, they had no problem, pressuring social media to censor American political speech. So
I didn't, and I'm sympathizing with the guy.
I didn't do that.
I sympathize with that guy, asshole. You closet case. What a
bad argument. That was a bad argument.
I think it's ironic and hypocritical, but the bottom line is this. If you are in this country to promote Hamas, to promote terrorist organizations, to participate in vandalism, to participate in acts of rebellion and riots on campus, we never would have let you in if we had known that. And now that we know it,
is it only
you're
pro-Palestinian people who are going to have their visas revoked, or are other points of view as well?
No, I think anybody who's here in favor. Look, we want to get rid of Tren de Agua gang members. They're terrorists too. The president designated them, asked me to designate, and I did as a terrorist organization.
They did crimes.
We want to get rid of them as well. We don't want terrorists in America. I don't know how hard that is to understand. We don't want people in our country that are going to be committing crimes and undermining our national security.
Again, he's just making all that up. He's not a terrorist. He's not charged with terrorism. He's not charged with a crime.
He's charged. Rubio, tell me how it's not gay if you're not in love with the guy now.
He's charged with having the wrong opinion about Israel. That's what he's charged with.
Well, those are serious charges, Jimmy. Did he boycott SodaStream?
It's that simple. Especially people that are here as guests. That is what a visa is. I don't know where we've gotten it in our head that a visa is some sort of birthright. It is not. It is a visitor into our country. And if you violate the terms of your visitation, you are going to leave.
Okay.
Well, I thought he had a green card.
I thought he was a legal resident, which is much different than a visa.
So he's lying on every part of this.
And can you check and look at? Did he have is he a legal resident? That's what I'm under. I can't believe that.
I don't want Bibi Netanyahu being a guest here because he supported terrorists with money. With my money.
That's right.
With my money.
If you're against people who support terrorists coming here, you'd be against Benjamin Netanyahu coming here.
Hey, they should stop doing his dry cleaning for him when he comes to the White House.
You'd also be against the United States because we funded terrorists in Syria. We fund them all over the place. Afghanistan.
Is Morning Micah going to be kicked out because her dad was the George Martin of Al Qaeda's Beatles?
According to the New York Times, Mahmoud Khalil is a permanent legal resident.
Permanent legal resident.
That's not a visa.
That's not a visa. Okay, so Mahmoud Khalil's case is setting up an epic First Amendment battle with Trump.
I can't believe Trump is guilty of the worst violation that I lived through ever. That's amazing to me. After all that crap the last 12 years?
It says it right there. He's a permanent legal resident, setting up a high-stakes legal battle between the First Amendment and what the government claims are its foreign policy powers. He's a Columbia University graduate who became a leader of pro-Palestinian protests on the campus. He was arrested on March 8th by immigration agents. So you're not allowed to have... So they keep saying pro-Hamas. He's pro-Palestinian. The problem is he's anti-Israel.
Oh, so I never had any criticism of Israel until I watched them doing this now. Do you know that? I never looked into it. I would never want to know about it. They're so egregious right now that I have to know about it.
After his arrest, immigration officials said they were seeking to deport him under a provision of federal law that gives the U.S. Secretary of State the power to deport someone if their presence in the country is deemed to have, quote, potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States. And by the United States, they mean about 700 people.
Yeah, the adverse consequences. How about the adverse consequences of our foreign policy?
Yeah, yes. The United States Constitution gives the president tremendous power over foreign affairs. The Trump administration is now trying to use the authority to dramatically expand its immigration powers and curtail rights for immigrants. They're trying to read foreign policy and national security and national interests all very broadly, and this seems sort of on the piece that with that, trying to now create essentially foreign policy authority to deport green card holders. A co-director of the Center for Immigration Law and Policy at the University of California, that's UCLA. The provision being cited in Khalil's case has rarely been used, and the scope of the Secretary of State's discretion is unclear. Yale professor said, courts have generally found that non-citizens such as Khalil, a legal permanent resident, have the same First Amendment protections that citizens do. So that's what courts have generally found. So the question in Khalil's case is how far those protections extend against a determination by the Secretary of State that a foreign national should be deported. The question in Khalil's case is, the primary issue in this case, I think, that is going to be litigated is whether this is unconstitutional First Amendment retaliation. If the First Amendment means anything, it means that the government can't lock you up or deport you because of your political views. That's literally the most important thing about this country. I would have to agree with that.
I thought it was our friendship with Israel was our most important thing.
I say the next big move, Donald Trump, is to start deporting anyone who agrees with a pro-Palestinian position, sending them back to whatever country 23andMe decides your heritage was.
That's illegal in Israel.
Which is illegal in Israel, by the way.
You're not allowed to get a DNA test in Israel. Russ Dobular told me that, and he was like, I have to check because I know it sounds crazy, and maybe I'm wrong. No, it's true.
So Krishnan said that the provision Rubio is relying on to pursue Khalil's immigration can't be used to override constitutional freedoms. Whatever the text of the statute says, it's subject to the First Amendment. And the theory of the case that they're advancing here is astonishingly broad.
Worse than anything the wokies did.
That's right. Federal law also blocks the government from removing someone because of the alien's past, current, or expected belief statements or associations if such belief statements or associations would be lawful within the United States, unless the Secretary of State personally determines that the alien's admission would compromise a compelling United States foreign policy interest.
That's Marco Rubio saying we, but he's the guy in charge of that.
In a legal filing on Thursday, Khalil's lawyer said it was obvious he was being punished for his viewpoint. Of course he is. I mean, that's obvious.
If you didn't charge him with nothing, then you got nothing.
Right.
That means you got nothing. That means you're doing what they did to Trump.
That's right. You're doing what they did to Trump.
Wow, it didn't take long, did it?
Neither Secretary Rubio nor any other government official has alleged that Mr. Khalil has committed any crime or indeed broken any law whatsoever. The Rubio determination was exclusively motivated by Mr. Khalil's lawful, constitutionally protected past, current, and expected belief statements or associations.
Yeah, well, the more they do this, the more again, I'm a guy, I always love to say this. I I'm prejudiced against Muslims and Arabs. I would never listen to them. I'm a good person. Israel has turned a lot of people off from Israel. A lot.
So you don't have to break a law to be deported anymore. It's our new inconvenient to the narrative rule. Thank you, everybody, as your involuntary world tour. Trump administration officials have not formally laid out the case for why they believe Khalil threatens the foreign policy interests of the United States. The White House told the outlet, The Free Press, that Khalil's arrest would be a blueprint for investigating other students.
Yeah, that's my top priority. Get people who say the word genocide at a student, or there's nothing worse than somebody telling you a real genocide that happened to your face. That's terrorism.
So Rubio said this is not about free speech. This is about people that don't have a right to be in the United States to begin with.
No, it isn't. He had a card.
That means we gave him the right have a right. He does. Rubio told reporters, you pay all the money to these high-priced schools that are supposed to be of great esteem, and you can't even go to class. You're afraid to go to class because these lunatics are running around with covers on their faces, screaming terrifying things. If you told us that's what you intended to do when you came to America, we would have never let you in. If you do it once, you get in. We're going to revoke it and kick you out.
But in fairness, Marco, Bibi wouldn't have told this guy his secret plans to do a false flag October 7th attack that he created himself to keep himself in power. How would this guy have known he was going to do that until the thing actually happened?
I just think the lunatics with covers on their faces. You mean like the thing that was mandatorily forced on us?
Yeah.
For like 3 years?
You mean a face keeper?
You must have been scared to death that whole time.
Oh my God, they've got face yarmulkes on.
Tom Homan, Donald Trump's border czar, suggested on Wednesday that Khalil had exceeded the protections of the First Amendment. When you are on campuses, I hear speech, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. Can you stand at a movie theater and yell fire?
Yes, you can. If it's on fire, especially, you should.
Can you slander free speech? Can you slander? Free speech has limitations. Yeah, but one of those limitations isn't about having a political opinion. That's not one of those limitations.
Not supportive of Israel. I'm pretty sure that's allowed. Still, we're fighting against it, but I think it's allowed right now.
So it seems like the government is running headlong into Supreme Court precedent and right into the teeth of the First Amendment.
Well,
Adam Cox, an immigration law professor at New York University, said that the government would probably meet skeptical judges if it argued that Khalil's speech was the basis for its decision to deport him. But he said if the government argued that it had non-speech basis for deporting Khalil, that could improve their chances of kicking him out of the country. Yeah. Khalil's lawyers would probably argue that such a rationale was pretextual, meaning concealing the government's actual intent. But courts might be reluctant to investigate such claims. If courts embrace the Trump administration's effort to justify removal on foreign policy grounds, it could have a profound effect. If the government has an objective to promote fossil fuel use across the globe, for example, then the Secretary of State could deem climate science advocates or even non-citizens who own green technology firms deportable on the ground that their residency undermines the policy objective of promoting fossil fuels.
We'll do that instead of this.
Rather than the statute setting the terms of deportability in advance, it would license the Secretary of State to turn nearly any activity into a basis for deportability after the fact. So, are you revoking visas for... let's listen. Here we go.
Are you revoking visas for students who clearly support Hamas and shows literature that's supporting Hamas? Or is it also include students who support Palestine or they say the freedom of the Palestinians or showing sympathy with civilians in Gaza? Is that area very clear?
Well, what Secretary Rubio has been saying on a number of different interviews is that this is about when you think about someone applying to come into the country to get a visa, if you were to say everything that he ended up doing as would be his goal upon entering the country, we would never have issued the visa. So you have a dynamic, whereas if there's going to be certain kinds of actions that you're going to undertake.
Okay, again,
what actions?
Again,
what actions?
What actions? And by the way,
actions.
And this isn't about a visa. This is about
a green card.
This is about a legal resident who the First Amendment protects. So now we're saying we only want certain political viewpoints in our country, which is the opposite of the whole oomph of the United States.
That we don't accept that. Every country has a right to control its borders and to determine who's going to come into the country. So this,
no one's saying you don't.
Are we going to vote on this? Because I'm curious as to whether a vote would say we should do what Israel wants all the goddamn time. I bet it wouldn't.
this particular instance, there's also, I know, a freedom of speech argument. But this is not about speech. It's about actions. It's about things that were done.
What actions?
What actions?
What actions?
Oh, my God. What actions?
What actions?
You planning on saying?
And why don't you charge him with a crime for those actions?
And, of course, I don't want to go further because...
Okay, of course you don't. So while the Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security has asked how Khalil supported Hamas and admits outright that his crime is just basically pro-Palestinian activity. Here's the question. How did he support Hamas? Exactly what did he do? This is the question Kurt and I are asking. The Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security says, well, I think you can see it on TV, right? This is somebody that we've invited and allowed the student to come into the country, and he's put himself in the middle of the process of basically pro-Palestinian activity.
Oh, that crime. Point to the law about that. Hey, you put yourself in the middle of basically pro-Palestinian activity.
So,
wow, the wokies have never said anything as retarded as this in the entire time that I can remember. Ever. This is real sinister, man.
So the right, Kurt, that's right. You cannot be foreign and have an opinion. I mean, you can barely have an opinion if you were born here. So you definitely are not allowed to have one if you're not born here.
Well, he shouldn't get to have more opinions than I get to have. That is fair.
That is fair.
I'm pretty sure I can have the opinion that I have right now that he's being deported for.
So here they are, arresting him. I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't want you.
So here is the ultimate. I wish I would have started with this. So Anya Parampel says, in my book, Corporate Coup, Venezuela and the End of the U.S. Empire, it details the shady character of Trump's pick for Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Did you know he fabricated his family history and once lived in one of Miami's most notorious cocaine dens, which his brother-in-law operated as a drug lord?
Well, I guessed it because it comes off like a gay coke whore.
Max Blumenthal says, it is perfect that the task of defaming Mahmoud Khalil as a bad immigrant for opposing Israel has fallen to Marco Rubio, the Cuban-American suck-up who lied about his own family's immigration history and lived in his convicted drug trafficking brother-in-law's Miami coke den. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that is interesting. CIA connections, probably?
Yeah.
Since it's coke being smuggled into the country on purpose?
And so here's from the book. I'll read it for you. Aside from pathetic dishonesty, Rubio's character was tarnished by revelations that throughout the 1980s, his brother-in-law, Orlando Sicilia, directed a $75 million cocaine smuggling ring out of his home in West Kendall, Florida. Sicilia was convicted of drug trafficking and sentenced to 35 years in prison in 1989, but released early in the year of 2000.
Whoa.
In his 2013 memoir, Rubio, who by then had featured Cecilia at numerous campaign events, claimed that he was unaware of his brother-in-law's criminal activity and had been stunned by news of his arrest. Yet in 2016, investigation by the Miami New Times cast doubt on the senator's account, revealing that as a teenager, Marco Rubio had actually lived in the home at the center of Cecilia's drug operation. For anyone to argue that teens of adults living at this time in Miami didn't know their family members were in the coke business is total horseshit, a former Miami-Dade detective told the publication as a response to Rubio's claims of ignorance. Though Rubio declined to comment on the story, it earned him the nickname Narco Rubio among Venezuelans, including government officials whom the senator repeatedly accused of trafficking drugs. The senator's most well-known moniker, however, was Little Marco, an alias bestowed upon him by then-candidate Trump during the 2016 presidential primary, when the future president publicly modeled Rubio's affinity for high-heeled boots, an apparent product
of
his dearth of height.
Wait, so him and DeSantis are both Cuban heels guys?
Apparently.
Wow, I gotta get that book.
So anyway, so there you go. So I'm all for deporting terrorists. I'm all for deporting criminals.
Narco's brother-in-law that he personally should deport.
Like Marco Rubio's brother-in-law, you would think, since he's in charge of that.
Your brother-in-law's a guest in this country, Narco.
Yeah, he's a guest.
That's a lot worse than getting in the middle of the Palestinian thing.
But I'm a strong supporter and defender and advocate of the First Amendment. And so if you're not, that looks bad on you. And again, the First Amendment isn't a treat that we give people. The First Amendment is a value that we cherish, we protect,
it's a right.
And it's a right, and we try to spread it to everybody everywhere. You know, like liberty and democracy and freedom, all that stuff we pretend our foreign wars are for.
Yeah.
Like that. Like our Constitution, like our Bill of Rights, things we want to spread around the world.
Well,
we don't want to hoard them.
What they're saying is those rights transcend the law. That's why they say the God part is to recognize you just get that whether we make a dumb law or not. That's just some stuff you're supposed to get.
Yeah.
That's what a right is. Yeah. That's how I look at it, and I feel very entitled to them. And
you can't make a right that contradicts the Constitution. And if you support a law that contradicts the Constitution, guess what that makes you? Un-American. That makes you anti-American. Over to stuff.
I disagree. I think it's very American to be a suck-up punk that used to live with a drug lord and then demonstrate your worth as someone that will do or say anything.
Okay.
Including marry a woman in the closet. Every grimy politician thing that they all do. What's more American than that? The only more American thing is keeping your head down and doing your job.
That's right.